All right, you guys ready for a rabbit hole? So I don't normally promote people going down rabbit holes. As a matter of fact, if you read my post and watch my videos, I usually say it's not a good idea to go down rabbit holes because you can really get caught there, waste a lot of time, and at the end of the day, a lot of this stuff doesn't even matter. So try not to waste your time on things that aren't really going to make a difference, because some things just don't matter. I'm not saying they're not interesting and fascinating, but some things don't matter, but some things do matter. All right. And the things that do matter, that can really make a difference in the quality of our life, those are the things that I focus on now. I don't really spend a whole lot of time looking at a lot of the agenda stuff, where it started, how, I try to keep up with like basic stuff because it's important for just reference and it's important for overall context. But I don't spend a whole lot of time working out the details because it is a waste of time. All right. I do believe that we are going through a major transformation on this planet. I think all of this is going to be completely fractured and radically altered very, very soon. None of this stuff is even going to matter. The only thing that's going to matter is whether or not you're in connection with your own internal light, your own internal being, because what's coming is going to be absolutely huge. That's what I align with. But when it comes to day-to-day health and things that we can do to empower ourselves, I'm willing to go down rabbit holes if it is going to help people make better decisions, because not being well sucks. It sucks. It makes living on this planet worse than it already is. Okay? And I mean that. Life on this planet sucks. And if you think it's great, it's because you love your slavery. You have completely adapted and complied and submitted to your slavery. All right, we're all slaves on this planet. I've talked about this in all of my videos. And this whole idea of, oh, we have free will, go ahead and try to use it. Go ahead and try to use your free will. If it bumps up against laws and rigid ideas and, it bumps up against the military or the government or, anybody that has, the means, to force you to comply with their shit, right? So we don't. It's a myth. Okay, it's a myth. And the only people that believe we're free are people who have completely embraced their slavery. Completely. Okay, what we have are privileges granted to us by government. Okay, we're not free people. All right, we're not free people. And this ties into the conversation today, even though it may not seem like it matches, but it does. It actually fits in perfectly. Because when you look at archaeological evidence and you study history, and this is pretty much what's known, and I guess some could argue, well, we can't prove it, and okay, I'll give you that. I'll give you that. But when you start connecting the dots, it's the only thing that makes sense. So again, you can believe what you want to believe, right? It's totally fair. But I tend to go with evidence and I go with what the dots are telling me. I don't go with what I want to believe. I don't go with what I think. I don't go with what feels right to me. I go with the evidence. This is the evidence. This is what the evidence shows from my perspective. And this is what makes the most sense to me. That is how I base my judgments. That's how I base everything. I base it on what I see, connect the dots, and what makes the most sense. Okay? So I'm going to talk about skincare, health, the sun, and influencers, narratives, both sides of the same controlled opposition narrative, okay? Because they're all the same at the end of the day. They just pretend to be at odds, but they're really just giving you two false narratives, so to speak, with maybe truth salt and peppered in, but it's not giving you the whole picture is what I'm saying. It's not giving us the whole picture. And we can end up falling into some pretty silly nonsense if we don't employ critical thinking. And sometimes it's hard to get to that critical thinking point because so many of us are brain damaged, where our brains just don't work right. Our minds don't work right. We don't have the ability to really question and to pierce through the veil of what we're being told. And when somebody has a degree or something, we tend to think that they know what they're talking about. And a lot of times they really don't. Okay. So it's important for us to do our own homework and to make our own decisions, not be led by others. Take information in, of course, but to really hear the whole story. So I've talked about this in a lot of videos, how the sunlight community just rubs me the wrong way. It rubs me the wrong way as much as the dermatology world rubs me the wrong way. Where I get this sick feeling, like I literally get this sick feeling. I get this deep sickness of like, ugh, like something's not right. I can't put my finger on it, but something's not right. Or I would hear something and be like, well, match it up to what I know or the evidence or what is obvious or what have you. And again, it's like I have this thing of like, I just, there's something. And then I start to see a red flag. I start to see another red flag. I start to see another red flag and another and another and another and another. And then eventually I'm like, wait a minute, there's too many red flags here. Way too many red flags here. So now I know that I'm being bamboozled. Now I know that these influencers are just completely spinning a narrative. And that's true for all the systems that are out there right now. And for as much as I love the carnivore community, and I have been eating a high-fat carnivore diet for almost 10 years, and I'm not saying that I don't do ketovore now and then, or that I don't have a little green beans now and then, or glass of wine now and then, like, you know, yeah, because I'm a human, I live on this planet, but I'm carnivore most of the time, the overwhelming majority of time, high-fat carnivore, and it makes me thrive. It makes me thrive, but I don't preach it to people. I only suggest it to people if they've tried other things and it's not working, and I'll be like, hey, why don't you try this? Or if somebody asks me why I do it, I tell them. Or if somebody wants to understand the physiology of why I do this, I'll explain to them the physiology and how the body interacts with certain nutrients and certain macros and why one might be better than the other. Well, one is better than the other. It's obvious. It's completely proven by physiology. But again, I'm just going to show, you know, the information and say, this is why I do what I do. And then the real life results of how I feel, you know, how I feel. That's, at the end of the day, that's the bottom line. And it gets at the root cause. Nutrition gets at the root cause, right? Helps to heal the root cause versus a lot of these other things that are just manipulating. Okay, they're not really getting to the root cause. So making lifestyle changes and diet changes are going to literally help your body to actually heal and repair. And, you know, this is where the sunlight community starts like really going down crazy town land, is because you need building blocks and you need nutrients in order for the body to truly heal and repair. You need protein, you need fat, you need nutrients, okay? And the sun doesn't give you protein, doesn't give you fats, doesn't give you the nutrients that the human body needs to survive, okay? So they are really telling a story that is so myopic, and they make it sound so complex and so unbelievable and so this and that, but they're literally leaving out 50% of the story of what sunlight does to the body. 50%, maybe even more, to be honest, okay? So they're only showing you what they want you to see, but they're not showing you what the full effects of solar radiation on human skin is actually doing. They're not giving you that. And then when they're called out on it, because they're called out on it, and they will try to defend it by saying that the net gain is more than the destruction. But the evidence doesn't support that. It actually doesn't support that at all. All right. And I'm going to try to shed some light on it. Now, how does this tie into what I was talking about earlier? Is that if you look at history from an archaeological perspective, okay, this is when things start to get really interesting and how it relates to the sun. Sun's health, our skin, all right, our health in general, is that prior to the agricultural revolution, humans were thriving on the planet, okay, and they were all melanated. They all had what's called permanent melanin. They all had dark skin. And yes, it would be lighter or darker depending on where you lived on the planet, but it was all permanent melanin. So even the people in the north had permanent melanin. All right, ancient Scandinavians and ancient people from Europe, the ancient European people had dark skin, permanent melanin skin. And then all of a sudden, right around the time of the agricultural revolution, which is also when the gods appeared on the planet, religion started appearing on the planet, okay, all over the planet, worshiping, let's just say that, worshiping, obeying, okay, the slave race, the slave planet, right, the slave stuff. It comes on at about the time of the agricultural revolution. And just as a little side note, it looks like prior to this, by many thousands of years, they attempted a reset as well. That's what it looks like with the Rh factor and some other weird blood stuff, okay, and some other weird genetic stuff that showed up like maybe around 30,000 years ago. It looks like they attempted a reset then, but it didn't go well. It didn't go well. And then it looks like they attempted it again during the agricultural revolution, which stuck. This one was successful, okay? So I'm just trying to make it make sense, trying to connect the dots so it makes more sense, all right? So now we have the agricultural revolution, and all of a sudden white people show up. What the fuck? White people just show up. It wasn't a slow grind, wasn't evolution, it literally just showed up, okay? And I want to talk about the differences between having the ability to tan versus permanent melanin, because this is where the story gets really interesting, okay? So having the ability to tan might give you a little bit of protection for the UVB rays, and it's not a lot, but it does give us some. But it doesn't protect us from the UVA rays. And the UVA rays actually slice through very, very deeply and literally cause damage at the level of your blood. It literally damages folate and some other nutrients. It literally damages your body at the level of the blood. And this is something that a tan does not protect you from, but yet permanent melanin does. So permanent melanin is basically acting like a fur would or a hairy, a hairy layer would. It's actually acting as a real barrier to the solar rays that are damaging for the body. And now, of course, we have visible light and infrared light, which I don't believe those are damaging for the body because we don't have anything to block those out. Of course, they're desperately trying to block those out. They want us to be blocked out completely from the sun. But I personally believe from all of the evidence that it's not the UVB and the UVA that they're hell-bent on. It's trying to find ways to block out the infrared and the visible light spectrum. Okay, that's where the agenda is heading, which is why the whole dimming of the sun, okay? The UVB and the UVA are not really helping the human body, which is why all of our ancient ancestors had a solid form of protection against it, okay? And there used to be more than half the amount of trees. There used to be more than double the amount of trees on this planet. Our ancestors were living in more shaded environments. And yes, they still had melanated skin, okay? So that melanated skin would even protect them from diffused sunlight, which goes to show that we are not meant for a high sun environment. Now, yes, granted, our ancestors would have to go out into the sun time to time. Okay, but you look at a lot of the cultures that held on to their siestas, right, in the hot afternoon. They don't go outside in the hot afternoon, okay? They just weren't dumb enough to do that. That came around with the agricultural revolution, and people were forced into slavery to tend the fields, Diet radically changed. So they're no longer eating a human appropriate diet. They are eating a diet based on agricultural garbage. Okay. So this is a real problem. And at the beginning of the agricultural revolution, there was massive deaths. Okay, because people weren't getting their animal nutrition that they were supposed to. People were being deprived of it. People were getting very sick. They were dying. They were working out in the fields. They were getting too much sun exposure. They were dying. Okay, so not a good thing. Okay, not a good thing. And they have the archaeological evidence to show that there were a lot of people dying at the beginning of the agricultural revolution. Not to mention that at the beginning of the agricultural revolution, there was massive genocide in Europe where they annihilated massive amounts of indigenous people, okay, that were melanated. They had this darker skin. There were those that got away, though. They were either able to escape or live on the fringe. So there were some that did exist, and they continued to coexist right alongside these white people that showed up on the planet. Where the fuck did they come from? Where did they come from? You think about religion and some of the ancient religious stories and some of the ancient stories that talk about interbreeding and genetic manipulation and all of this. Yeah, these stories have been on the planet for thousands of years. And now that they have the archaeological evidence to show these huge gaps, going, wait a minute, how did we go from this to this because we can't piece it together? Something happened. Something happened. Boom, something happened. Okay, so it's interesting. Agriculture, religion, white people show up at the same time. And the white people were the slaves, and the melanated people were forced into it. But a lot of them resisted. A lot of them resisted, as you can see around the planet. But what's really interesting is that these gods penetrated the entire planet. And you see a lot of these melanated people started worshiping and started taking on these religious ideas. You see it all over the planet. So it wasn't just the white people. So I don't want to mislead people with that. It wasn't just that. You see all of the nations, or all of the continents, I should say. They weren't nations, but all of the continents and all of the areas on the planet that started to worship and started to obey and bow to these gods, which was outside of them. This did not exist prior to the agricultural revolution. At least there's absolutely no evidence to support that it did. Okay, this was like a clear-cut break. Something was fractured, something was broken, and then a new reset was put into place. And then through religious colonization and military efforts, they were able to colonize the entire planet. And now we are where we are, and we are where we are at. Okay, so how does this tie into the sun and our health and skin and all of that? See how interesting it is? Okay, because white people are now extremely vulnerable to the sun. Extremely. We don't have any permanent melanin. The tan that we can have does not protect us from the UVA, which is very damaging to our skin if it goes unmitigated and we have too much sun exposure without protection. Okay, and the UVA can actually sneak in, like through canopies and stuff, a lot easier than the UVB. So the melanin does protect people from the UVA, even when they're in the shade or under a canopy. White people have no such protection because a tan for us doesn't give us that protection. So we are the underdog for sure when it comes to that. Okay, we are just not equipped. And now you add the fact that we're eating a non-human appropriate diet, which means we don't have adequate healing and repair tools. It makes sense why white people have the highest rates of skin cancer on the planet, okay? Even if you don't live in a hot environment, okay? So even people in Europe, white people have a lot of skin cancer, okay? They know this, okay? And of course, the skin cancer rates really boomed, since the 80s because everybody was sunbathing in the 80s because we were dumb and didn't know any better. And that really kind of like exploded the skin cancer boom. And a lot of people will say that skin cancer took off when sunscreens did. And yeah, it did. And I mean, it's a correlation. But it doesn't mean skin cancer was caused by sunscreens. It means people were sunbathing. Okay, people are sunbathing now. And I don't think those chemical sunscreens helped because they're man-made. They only blocked UVB, which makes you far more susceptible to UVA damage. It's a shit show. Okay, so they certainly didn't help the situation. All right, but people were sunbathing. And sunbathing is absolutely going to increase your risk of skin cancer. We are not meant to be sunbathing. Humans are not supposed to be sunbathing. Okay. And I erroneously believed a lot of the sunlight healing community narrative. You have to remember, I've been in the health world for my entire adult life. And even though I have a background in science, I have a background in skin science, I have a background in skincare, and I understood the damaging effects of the sun because it's there. It is undeniable. But what I fell for is I fell for the fact that moderate levels, and as long as you don't get sunburned, has to be okay for us, because otherwise nature wouldn't allow it. And this is where my mind went, thinking nature has to be right. Nature is right. Nature made humans with permanent melanin. That is the human race prior to the invention of white people. Okay? And yeah, I'm Caucasian, right? So I'm saying this about my own DNA, but I know I'm not my DNA. I know that I am a spiritual being that happens to inhabit a human body. So I have no problem talking about this stuff, okay? And when people want to talk about, white people starting slavery and all of that, I don't know if that's true. White people were actually slaves of the gods. So we were enslaved. The white people were enslaved by these gods. Look at mythology. Okay. And then you start to see, melanated people enslaving their own people. So it wasn't just a white people thing. It was all over the planet. But it really started when the white people arrived on the planet. They dominated Europe, and then they started to try to take over other parts of the world. I mean, it's just unbelievable. It's not our fault, right? It's not my fault. It's not anybody's fault who's living in a white body, right? And the whole idea that we are supposed to be building up a solar callus and getting tan to get our vitamin D, that's not how our ancestors did it. They got it by eating animal foods, lots of fatty animal foods. They got plenty of vitamin D. And what vitamin D you do make from the sun is to actually repair the damage. It is not for nutritional status. Seriously. And now you have all these white people that are sunbathing to get vitamin D, not realizing that it's destroying your folate and it's doing really bad stuff to your body. That vitamin D that you're trying to bank or you're trying to get for your internal organs has to damage the repair and repair the damage at your skin level, because otherwise you'll get cancer. You'll get cancer. So a lot of it is being robbed. A lot of it is being utilized to constantly have to heal and repair your skin. You may get some, in your reserves. Absolutely. Okay. Your body can bank it. Your body can store it in fat. Your body can store extra vitamin D for sure. Okay. But your needs for it are now exponentially higher. Okay. And people say, oh, I feel better when I get sunshine. Oh, I just feel better. We are supposed to have ambient light. We're supposed to have diffused light. But when you bake in the sun, it causes a lot of destruction to your skin. We don't have the protection of permanent melanin. Okay, so if you're white, it's a huge problem. So this is where I'm going with it. I'm not saying that we don't need some amount of sunlight. Okay, but what I'm saying is the sunlight community is completely misguiding people, completely. And a lot of their studies, if you do some research, you quickly see the flaws in them, okay? Quickly. Because when you look at people that work, like in South America and stuff, the people working on the plantations and the people working in the fields and whatever, they are not doing so well. Their health is not great. They are not healthier because they're working out in the sun. It's actually to their detriment. And they know that workers who work out in the sun all day, landscapers, farmers, or whatever, have very high rates of skin cancer, have very, very, very high rates of skin damage. Okay, so it is not a good thing. The carnivore community would add that it's because they don't have a human appropriate diet, and I would say it's not helping them. The fact that they're not eating a human appropriate diet, it is absolutely not helping their skin at all. And if you are eating a human appropriate diet, it is going to give you more protection. But what we need to remember is that eating a human appropriate diet does not stop the UVA rays from penetrating into your blood and destroying your folate and causing other damage to your body. Okay? No amount of animal food prevents that. Okay? And yes, do carnivores age slower? They do tend to. When you look at a lot of the carnivore influencers that have been doing it 10, 15 years, yeah, they don't look like they're aging fast, okay? But again, it's because we have a lot of repair tools. We're able to repair faster, which is a good thing, but it's also using resources. It's using resources that your body wouldn't need to be using if you weren't getting as much sun exposure, all right? So that's all I'm saying. The damage is happening. It's just, if you don't have the resources to heal it, you're going to have the boot on your head versus being able to keep plugging along and doing okay. Because remember, a healthy body can handle a decent amount of stress. And we live in a world full of stress. So yes, a healthy body can handle that better, all right? But there's limits. And when we think about tanning, okay, so for those of us that aren't melanated and we tan as we get damaged. So we only get a tan once we get sun damaged. We get skin damage, our body panics, and boom, goes into this defensive mode and starts this cascade of a healing response because of cellular damage. That's not a good thing, okay? It's a response to damage. So any of the perceived benefits are a direct response to cellular damage. It is not addressing the root cause. It is not nutritive, okay? It's a response to damage. It's very, very different. Very different than eating food, eating animal foods that don't damage our body, okay? We get nutrients, our body uses it. And yes, there's some metabolic stuff that happens that our body has to eliminate. And I mean, that's the feedback loop, right? But the response to stress is because, the response to the stress of the sun is because solar radiation is very damaging to human cells. At least the UVA and the UVB. And the UVA doesn't burn us. So we have no way of knowing that that's happening. And this ties back into the permanent melanin situation. So the visible tan that we get, that Caucasian people get, only protects us from the UVB. That's not nature. Nature wouldn't do that. Nature gave people melanin, a permanent state of melanin to protect you from both of those rays. Okay? So a lot of people that start sunbathing are also like eating better, and they're also more active, because let's face it, if you're outdoors getting sun, you're active, okay? So your lifestyle is going to be healthier in general. We can't always say that it's because you're getting direct sunlight exposure. I don't expose myself to the hot sun, and I feel phenomenal. I'm 57 years old. I sailed through menopause. I feel phenomenal. I stopped exposing myself to direct sunlight when we got rid of our boat. And even then, I wore a hat and I sat under the tents, and, I didn't bake in the sun. I stopped doing that a long time ago. And I feel amazing. I don't let myself get tan anymore. Now, I get a little bit of color because I do spend time outside, but I do protect my skin, so I don't get nearly as dark as I used to. And when my kids were growing up, I did protect them. I didn't put sunscreen on them very often. When I did, it was mineral sunscreen, but they always had hats on when they were little. They always had long sleeve things on. I did try to protect their skin as much as possible. We had the boat though, so they were in the water a lot. And it was a delicate balance. Like, I would try to encourage them to keep a shirt on their body to protect themselves. My kids did get a bit tan, when they were little, which I regret not protecting their skin more than I did, but I thought a little bit of a tan is probably at least somewhat beneficial, considering my kids were outdoors all the time. And the thought of smearing sunscreen on them all the time was just crazy to me. It just, I couldn't wrap my head around it. So I did try to encourage them to wear hats and wear long sleeves and just protect their skin. And to this day, I try to encourage them to protect their skin. My daughter was going through a period where she was wanting to get a little bit of a tan. So she was like sunbathing, not at like the hottest times of the day, but she was like sunbathing. She'd come and lay on my deck and I'm like, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? Well, I want to get a little bit of a tan. I'm like, don't do it. Don't do it. Trust me, you'll regret it. You will regret it. So I've finally convinced her. So now she does wear a little bit of sunscreen and she does protect her skin more. I don't know if she sunbathes at all anymore. If she does, I think she does it during like really early and really late. I don't think she does it during the hot times anymore. At least she's not coming to my house and sunbathing on the deck. She'll sit out on the deck, but she'll have clothes on. I always tell her to wear a hat. She, wanted to know what sunscreen I was using, and I love the Badger. The coconut oil one is my favorite one. It's the Daily 30, and I do like the other one too, the baby formula with the Roman chamomile and calendula. And I like their other one, their unscented one. The one with the coconut oil, though, is my favorite. It's just my absolute favorite. It's what I have on today. And it doesn't seem to irritate my skin. Some of the other ones irritate my skin sometimes, but the one with the coconut oil doesn't. So that's my favorite at this time. And of course, I use mineral powders on my face too. And that gives me some extra protection. And I know people say that, oh, it lets everything lets microscopic amounts of UV in. And, is it more than, a regular formulated sunscreen? Maybe, but humans are designed for diffused sunlight. We are made for that. So little microscopic amount, as long as I'm not pink or red or burning, I don't really think at the end of my life that is going to contribute to any major stuff. At least I don't think so, because I am protecting my skin from getting pink, from getting red, from getting burned. And again, I can't be sure how much UVA I'm getting protected from. Who knows, right? I have no idea how to test that. So most days, if my skin is okay with it, I do put a sunscreen on, and then I'll put a little bit of mineral powder on over that, just to give me like a little bump. But there's times when I rely only on the mineral powders because my skin is just not super happy with my sunscreens at that moment. So yeah. And again, I've talked about my skin saga. I've had a lot of skin damage, and I've had serious damage, serious damage. So my skin is very, very sensitive. Although I have to say, I thought it was going to get more sensitive going through menopause, and I was actually really nervous. But it's actually reversed. It's actually gotten significantly better. I can put things on my skin now that I wasn't able to. My skin doesn't get flaming red anymore. I don't have that beet red face like I used to. My nose doesn't get red and swell anymore. It's so much better. It's so much better. Like, my skin is doing exponentially better than it ever has in my entire life. So I am not complaining. But every now and then my skin does get a little bit sensitive. And I just honor it. And so I wear the mineral powders and just cover up. Although, this still allows way too much skin to be showing. So I'll usually keep my hair down and wear a hat to protect, this part of my skin when it's a non-sunscreen day. But I did put a little bit of sunscreen on today because I've been out for a few walks and stuff. And I do have a little bit of mineral powder on today. But yeah, my skin's not nearly as red as it used to be. So I want to just talk a little bit about some of the premise that the sunlight healing community is putting out there about building this solar callus, getting more sun, especially direct sun. And they're talking about the healing benefits and stuff. And I've already talked about how they're not true healing benefits. They're just an effect of the body's response to defend itself. It's not a true healing response, okay? And one of the things that people will mention is that people with diabetes, okay, can lower their blood glucose by being in the sun, but this is purely a defense mechanism. It's because the glucose is needed to make energy to protect your skin from the sun. It is not healing the problem. Is not, okay? And I could go on and give a million more examples, okay? So like saying it lowers blood pressure. Well, if you don't have high blood pressure, the sun lowering your blood pressure could be a really bad thing. This is why people can get dizzy in the sun and feel kind of off balance because they don't need their blood pressure lowered. So it's not selective, is what I'm saying. It's not selective. It is a response to the body going, oh, I got to protect myself. It's not selecting. It's not saying you have high blood pressure, so we're going to help lower your blood pressure. No, it's just a physiological effect that happens when you're in the sun. These are not healing responses. They're not healing responses. It's manipulation. Okay, so it's substituting the fact that you need to change your diet, you need to change your lifestyle, you need to get your life in alignment with our biology and physiology so that you are truly healthy. The sun is not a nutrient. I'm going to go to my grave saying this, I believe. At least right now, I'm 99.9999999999999% sure, okay? It's not a nutrient, okay? And to say that, you know, the sun is like so important that we get sun on our skin, but yet you overlook nutrition, although the carnivore community definitely looks at the nutrition, but a lot of people in the sunlight community, I don't want to say a lot of them, but some of the people in the sunlight community are still preaching nonsense. Some are outright preaching a plant-based diet. Some are promoting these types of things. Some people are overweight, look bad, and clearly are pre-diabetic and clearly have big guts and visceral fat and are baking out in the sun. It's nonsense. And to any critical thinker to look at that and be like, damn, right? And then there's a popular influencer who used to be carnivore. Now he's eating a shit ton of plants and he's got wicked tan and he has aged so much. He doesn't look great for his age. So I don't know. I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced. And it's the same thing with the people that are like in the fitness industry that are in their 50s pushing like how important fitness is for older people. There's one woman in particular, she's like 52. She looks older than I do. I'm 57. She exercises quite a bit. She looks way older than me. She has way more wrinkles than I do. Her skin is far more aged. Now, maybe she just gets a lot more sun exposure than I do now. Believe me, I've had a million lifetimes worth of sun throughout my life. I cannot afford any more direct sunlight on my skin. I have to protect my skin. I am absolutely not going there. And she also does not promote a carnivore diet. She looks kind of old. She doesn't look great for her age. It's not a good poster look, okay? She doesn't make for a good poster child for her message. Now, her body looks good. Like, I'm not going to lie, her body looks good. But she doesn't look good externally. And remember, this is really showing us a lot. Now, with that said, there's a lot of people that have premature aging but don't get skin cancer. So they have enough repair mechanisms to keep them from getting skin cancer, but they do end up aging prematurely. And there's going to be different levels of aging prematurely. Okay, so the sun absolutely ages us. That's not a lie. Where I part ways with the dermatology world is that they are so focused on surface that they don't look at overall health. And they promote band-aids that could potentially be harmful. That is what I don't align with at all. And dermatologists never even attempt to show you the bigger picture, never. They just give you what serves the dermatology industry. They don't really give you the whole truth. They don't give you the full truth. And the sunlight community isn't giving you the full truth either. And I don't deny that we need, again, diffused light, early morning light, late afternoon light. That is when our ancestors would have been out doing their stuff. They would not be out in the hottest times of the day getting direct sunlight on unprotected skin. It just was not happening. And if they did, they had melanin to protect them, permanent melanin, which we don't have. Us white people don't have it, okay? And they would have been sensible. They would have not stayed out longer than they had to. Was only during the times of the agricultural revolution when people were forced out into the sunlight in the amounts that they were, and that is when human health and everything about humanity started to basically devolve, deteriorate. We're not doing so well. We're not doing so well. Okay, we're actually not living longer. I don't believe that for 1 second. We are not living longer than our ancestors. Okay, that's a myth. That is a myth. And when you pound that long enough, you finally get to the truth of it. Our ancestors were far healthier than we are. They did not have to deal with the insults that we are dealing with on a daily basis. And the fact that humans are eating an inappropriate diet, exposed to so many poisons and toxins and environments that are completely unnatural, the fact that anybody can live to be 100 is fucking truly a miracle. Don't tell me that our ancestors were all dying young. And, you know, whenever, you know, I hear, oh, well, they were all dying young because they didn't have antibiotics and they didn't have hospitals. That's a joke. That's a joke. For one thing, they probably didn't need antibiotics. They were absolutely not getting sick the way that we're getting sick. They were far, far healthier. My children are adults now and they've never had antibiotics. You don't need antibiotics to live. The human body can overcome, you know, bacterial infections. Not to mention our ancient ancestors knew about natural medicine as well. This is something that even our primal ancient ancestors, they knew about natural medicine. Okay, and yeah, they didn't have hospitals. So if there was a catastrophic accident, they would die. They didn't have a hospital to put them together. Okay, but I'm going to say that the human body was far more capable of healing before the agricultural revolution as well. Okay, so short of a catastrophic injury, okay, people would have had the potential to live to be very, very old. Very old. Okay, they weren't all starving to death. They weren't all dying from bacterial infections. Okay, not true. Our ancestors were expert hunters. Okay, the narratives we've been told are just silly. They're just silly and ridiculous. Okay, so we have to put everything in perspective and we have to remember to connect the dots. So I have been at it for almost 45 minutes. I could keep going. I could go on and on and on, but I think I'm going to leave this here and then I will pick up in another video. And I just want to add something, just, you know, to make it make more sense. So you guys know how I feel about RFK and the whole political bullshit narrative. It's all Hollywood. And RFK is married to an actress. That's all you need to know. It's all Hollywood. All Hollywood. It's all a show. Okay, it's all a show. All of it. And I've always hated Jack Cruz. I've never liked him. I despise him. Just the look of him when he speaks makes me want to vomit. And I think most of what he says is bullshit. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people that are into him. I don't understand it because he's not nice. He's not a nice person. It's so obvious. He's just terrible. When he interviews with people and stuff, he's a terrible person. He's mean. He's really mean and arrogant, and I despise that. And, you know, he's buddy-buddy with RFK, and he's buddy-buddy with a lot of these high-level elite people, and he comes out of, I think, Stanford. I believe it's Stanford, and he's sketchy as fuck. And it just kills me that people don't see that people don't look through the stuff and see what's at the core. His energy is bad. It's really bad. And I think a lot of people, they're not in tune with that. And so they just don't feel that feeling. It's really bad. Some people are really good at fooling us. Some people are really good at tricking us. And I've been tricked by people. I've been fooled by people. Absolutely. But he never fooled me. He never fooled me for a second. And so when he shows up on the stage with players, you know he's a player. Same thing with Paul Saladino. Sorry, not sorry. And there's a lot of people out there that I think have valuable information, but I question them as well. I don't trust anybody. I'm so cynical. I'm really cynical. And the people pushing the whole theory of evolution and their genetic drift, seriously. Honestly, it's just a tragic comedy at this point. But I'm going to be signing out.